The crowd at the county horse auction grew quiet the moment the thin gelding limped into the ring. Dust clung to his ribs like a second skin, and his right hind leg dragged with every weak step he took. People turned away as if the sight hurt their eyes. A few laughed under their breath, shaking their heads at the poor creature that looked more ghost than horse. Even the auctioneer paused, eyebrows lifting, as if he wondered why the wrangler even bothered bringing this one out. He lifted the microphone with a sigh. Next up, number 61, gelding, 6 years old, no papers, starting at $1. A wave of laughter rolled through the barn. Not a single hand went up. At the back of the auction yard, an old man stood by a leaning fence post. His coat was torn, his boots worn thin, and his hat faded from years of sun. His name was Elijah Creel, though most folks only knew whispers about him. Some said he lost his ranch, others said he lost much more. That he kept to himself now because silence hurt less than talking. Elijah watched the horse closely. The gelding shifted on trembling legs, tugging at the rope held by the wrangler. There was no wild fire in those eyes, only exhaustion, and a deep, sad patience. A horse that had learned to expect nothing good. Yet Elijah saw something there, something quiet, something worth saving. He raised his hand. $1. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. We've got $1. Do I hear two? Silence settled like dust. Going once. Going twice. The gavel struck. Sold. A few men laughed. One called out, "Should have paid you to take it, Creel." Another jeered, "That horse is nothing but glue." Elijah didn't answer. He had no interest in their opinions. The wrangler handed him the lead rope, and the gelding lowered his head, as if ready for whatever came next, good or bad. They walked slowly toward Elijah's old rusted trailer, moving in the same tired rhythm, one step at a time. "Name's Samson," Elijah said softly, giving the horse a gentle pat. "Don't know yours yet, but we'll find it." The gelding hesitated before stepping into the trailer, but he went in without a fight. Elijah shut the gate and climbed into his truck. The hour-long drive home rolled past quiet fields, broken fences, and barns beaten by wind and time. Elijah's ranch had once been full of life. Now only a few acres remained, and most of that looked more memory than living land. He parked beside the last standing stable, a crooked old building that leaned like a tired man. He lowered the trailer ramp and whistled. The gelding backed out slow and careful. Elijah led him into a stall filled with fresh straw. "No rush," he murmured. "You've got time now." That night Elijah sat on his porch with a cup of thin coffee, watching the stars shimmer over the plain. He heard the gelding shift in the stall, each breath soft and low. Elijah hadn't planned on buying a horse. He came to auction sometimes just to look. But when he saw that wounded creature, something inside him woke up. It reminded him of Cypress, the wild Mustang he had once trained. The horse who became his closest friend before dying the year Elijah's son vanished without a trace. Since then, Elijah spoke to almost no one. He kept empty barns and an empty heart. But this horse stirred something he thought was gone forever. Morning came with cool winds sweeping over the grass. Elijah carried a bucket of oats to the stall. The gelding lifted his head and watched him with cautious eyes. "Going to call you Dusty," Elijah said as he poured the feed. "You were nothing but dust when I found you." Dusty sniffed the oats, then ate slowly, as if unsure he deserved it. Over the next few days Elijah left space between them. He didn't push, didn't force trust, didn't ask for more than the horse could give. Dusty watched him from the stall, ears twitching each time Elijah talked while sweeping the yard or fixing a fence. Eventually Dusty let Elijah brush him, standing still though his body trembled at first touch. Elijah spoke softly through each stroke. He talked about the weather, about the broken truck, and one evening he talked about his son. His name was Luke, Elijah said. Loved horses more than anything. Took off one night after we argued. Never wrote. Never came home. Dusty flicked an ear as Elijah's voice grew tight. Every auction I go to, part of me thinks maybe I'll see him there, standing with some horse he saved. Elijah shook his head. Never happens. Just ghosts. The wind whispered across the dry grass. Dusty leaned slightly into Elijah's hand. "You're the first one I brought home since he left," Elijah whispered. That night, for the first time in years, Elijah left the stable door cracked open. Dusty's soft breathing drifted out into the night like a promise. Days rolled by. Dusty gained weight, his coat lost some of its dullness. The limp eased with rest and good feed. Elijah took him into the round pen, with nothing but a halter and patience. Dusty walked circles, tense but listening. Slowly he began to trust the quiet man beside him. One cool evening, Dusty stopped, turned toward Elijah, and lowered his head. Elijah breathed out. "That's it," he said. "That's the start." And for the first time in many years, hope flickered inside his chest like a small, steady flame. Dusty moved with a slow trot around the round pen, as the pale morning sun climbed the sky. His limp had faded to a small hitch, just a reminder of how he once struggled to stand. His coat held a faint shine now, and his muscles were beginning to return. Elijah leaned on the old wooden fence, watching closely, his arms folded tight across his chest. He tried to hide the way hope had begun to grow inside him, but his eyes betrayed it every time Dusty took another confident step. Dusty still startled at sudden noise. He still froze when shadows moved too fast, but each day, he let Elijah a little closer. Trust came slow, like water seeping through hard ground. Elijah respected that. He had learned long ago that broken things did not heal through force. They healed through patience. Training sessions grew longer, but never harsh. Elijah rewarded small moments. The way Dusty stood still during grooming. The way he stepped toward Elijah without being asked. The way he accepted the saddle blanket for the first time without flinching. Every tiny change mattered. Every sign of courage meant the past was loosening its grip. 2 weeks passed before Elijah even considered saddling him. Dusty stiffened when the saddle touched his back, but he did not panic. Elijah spoke calmly, adjusting the straps with quiet hands. He had trained horses for most of his life, but he hadn't felt this careful in years. Dusty wasn't just another horse, he was a second chance. That afternoon, Elijah placed one boot in the stirrup and eased himself into the seat. His knees ached, and his back complained as his weight settled. Dusty tensed, but he did not move. Elijah let out a long, steady breath. "We're all right," he whispered, "just you and me." They walked in a slow circle. Dusty responded to Elijah's light pressure, uncertain but willing. Each step felt like a small miracle. When Elijah dismounted, he stroked Dusty's face. Dusty leaned into his hand with a quiet sigh. That evening, as the sky turned purple and red, Elijah sat on the porch with his coffee. The ranch felt alive again. Dusty's soft knickers drifted through the open window. Elijah still had silence in his life, but it no longer felt heavy. It felt shared. Then he heard something he hadn't expected. Tires on gravel. A shiny truck far newer than anything that belonged on his land pulled into the yard. Elijah stood, heart thudding as a man stepped out, tall, lean, dressed in clean jeans and a pressed shirt. His hair was shorter than Elijah remembered. His face older. But the eyes. Elijah froze. Luke, his son. 12 years of distance stood between them. Luke took one step forward and stopped. "Hey, Dad." Elijah swallowed. "Didn't think I'd see you again." "I didn't think so either," Luke said. They stood facing each other, the years like a canyon open between them. Luke rubbed the back of his neck, searching for words. "I heard you bought a horse at the auction," he said. "A friend told me you walked out with something half dead." Elijah gave a small nod. "Didn't plan on it." "Can I see him?" Luke asked. Elijah led him to the stable. Dusty stood alert, ears forward. Luke stepped close, letting the horse sniff him before running a gentle hand along Dusty's neck. "He's got fight in him," Luke said. "More than I expected." "He was nothing but bones when I found him," Elijah replied. "Didn't think I'd care again." Luke looked at him, eyes soft. "But you did." For the next week, Luke stayed at the ranch. He fixed fences, repaired creaking doors, cleaned the old tool shed. They didn't talk much about the past, just enough to know the hurt was still there but no longer in control. They worked together with Dusty, building trust as a team. Luke even rode Dusty once, after asking Elijah's permission. The gelding responded with careful strength, as if showing both men the truth. Healing did not erase scars, but it built something stronger. One morning, while they tightened a saddle girth, Luke asked, "What are you going to do with him?" "Keep him," Elijah said. "Maybe ride him. Let him be what he wants to be." "You could show him," Luke suggested. "County fair's coming up. He'd stand out." "I'm not much for crowds," Elijah muttered. That night, Elijah found a folded flyer on the porch bench. Spring County Horse Show, 3 weeks away. On the back, in Luke's handwriting, "I'll ride him if you want, or stand beside you if you change your mind." Elijah held the flyer for a long time. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks to build the courage he wasn't sure he had. The next morning he walked out to where Luke was tossing hay. "If you think he's ready," Elijah said, "we'll go." Luke turned, squinting into the sun. "He's ready." They both looked toward the stable. Dusty stood framed in the doorway, stronger than he had ever been, watching them as if he understood everything. The fair was coming, and it would change all of their lives. The fairgrounds were alive with noise and color. Children ran between booths. Cowboys led polished horses toward the warm-up rings, and the sound of fiddle music drifted over the dusty air. Elijah stood at the rail of the main arena, his hands gripping the wood so tight his knuckles turned pale. He tried to stand steady, but the truth was clear in his eyes. He was nervous in a way he hadn't felt since the day he last watched his son ride as a boy. Dusty stood nearby, waiting with Luke in the warm-up circle. The gelding no longer looked like the rejected horse Elijah bought for $1. His coat shimmered bronze in the sun, his muscles full and strong. The limp had faded into a small shadow of what it once was. His head was held high, his ears alert, and his eyes bright with calm focus. Luke rode with easy confidence. He spoke to Dusty in a quiet voice, guiding him with smooth, practiced hands. They moved together like they had shared years instead of weeks. It wasn't just training. It was understanding. Both of them had been lost once. Both of them had been given a second chance. Dusty's event was the trail course. It was meant to show trust, control, and partnership. There were gates to open, poles to step over, and a wooden bridge that many horses struggled with. Speed meant nothing. Patience and trust meant everything. Elijah watched as Luke guided Dusty into the start position. The judge lifted a hand. The crowd quieted. The moment felt heavy with meaning. Dusty stepped forward toward the first obstacle, a narrow gate. Luke leaned slowly, unlatching it with careful fingers. Dusty did not move until Luke asked. Then he sidestepped through the opening with slow, steady steps. A ripple of approving murmurs passed through the crowd. Next came the bridge. Elijah's breath caught. Dusty stopped at the edge, nostrils flaring. The wood creaked under the weight of the horse that had crossed before them. Dusty's ears flicked back in fear. Luke loosened the reins and whispered something Elijah couldn't hear. Dusty stepped forward. One hoof touched the plank, then another. His body trembled, but Luke stayed steady in the saddle, encouraging him with gentle pressure. Dusty crossed the bridge. The crowd clapped, louder this time. Obstacle after obstacle, Dusty moved with grace. Not perfect, not flashy, real, honest. The kind of horsemanship that came from earning trust one day at a time. When the scores were announced, Dusty placed second. The rider who beat them was a girl with a well-trained quarter horse, but Elijah didn't care, neither did Luke. Dusty had already won something far more important. After the event, Elijah walked up to Dusty and placed a hand on his neck, brushing the smooth coat with pride. Luke stood beside them, smiling in a soft, quiet way. "You made him whole," Luke said. Elijah shook his head. "No, he made us whole." As the sun dipped lower, trucks rumbled out of the fairground. Luke lingered near the trailer, hands in his pockets. Elijah noticed the tension in his shoulders. "You thinking about leaving again?" Elijah asked. Luke hesitated. "A friend of mine is working a cattle drive up in Montana. He asked if I'd join for a few weeks." Elijah nodded slowly. He understood wandering hearts. "You taking Dusty?" "If he's willing," Luke said. His voice softened as Dusty nudged his arm. "I think it would be good for him." "And for me." Elijah stepped beside his son, shoulder to shoulder. "I'm not asking you to stay. But the south fence needs mending, and the pasture hasn't had a good hand in years." Luke looked at him, eyes narrowing with thought. "You offering me a job?" Elijah smiled, a small, tired smile that held more love than words. "I'm offering you a place." Luke swallowed and nodded. "I'll come back. This time I want to." That evening, Luke packed a small bag. Dusty loaded into the trailer without hesitation. Elijah handed Luke a faded kerchief containing a single brass spur. "His father's spur." "He always said this reminded him that every bit of pressure needs a release," Elijah said. "So a horse knows you're guiding, not fighting." Luke held it like something sacred. "Thank you." They shook hands. Not strangers. Not men trapped in old wounds. Father and son, finally standing on level ground. The truck pulled away. Elijah watched until the dust settled, and the road grew quiet again. A week later, a letter arrived. Luke's handwriting was quick and slanted. Dusty crossed the river like he owned it. First day, he outworked every horse on the drive. You were right, he wasn't broken, just waiting for the right hand. Maybe I was too. Tell the fence I'll fix it when I get back. Luke. Elijah read it 3 times before setting it on the table. He looked out toward the empty corral and smiled. That night in Montana, Luke sat beside a fire. Dusty grazed nearby, strong and calm. The sky stretched wide above them, full of sharp stars. Luke wrote in his journal, while the brass spur glimmered faintly in the firelight. Dusty lifted his head, ears pricking at the wind. Luke looked up and smiled. He didn't know what the next month would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. He finally knew where home was. And he knew he was coming back,